Well, welcome everyone, and this week something a little different. We're going to give you a status update on where many of the projects here at Purnon are up to. For those of you who've been following recent videos, or indeed if you've seen the news here in Europe, you'll know that there has been not just a heat wave, but a heat dome that has covered where we live here in France. We've had absolutely brutally hot conditions. The heat has been trapped in really by the weather pattern, and this week has been the culmination of several weeks of very, very hot weather indeed. All of the temperature records here in France have been broken, and it's been way too hot for our artisans to work safely on projects around the chateau.
But it's interesting, isn't it, to see how the chateau was designed and how well it has handled these extreme temperatures. It's been a furnace outside. When you walk outside, you get hit by this wall of heat, but inside we've managed to remain relatively cool. The big stone walls are doing a great job of keeping us protected from this crazy heat wave.
Yeah, no matter how hot it is outside, we certainly don't need air conditioning inside the chateau, which is something we're really thankful for. But I guess the project we get asked most often about is the status of the two lions that sit on these pedestals next to us here. Hun, can you give us an update as to where they're at?
Well, this is a really exciting update. Actually, this week we travelled to the workshop of the incredible artisan Yannick Kocher, who has been charged with the responsibility of recreating Purnon's majestic lions. We have taken you to his workshop once before when he was working on the initial models of the lions. Remember, the originals are too degraded to keep, and so we are making replicas. And this week was fantastic because they have started carving in stone. The workshop was a hive of activity. There's 3 of them working on the lions. They have already done the 2 bodies. They've completed the 2 bodies, and they had started working on the faces of the lions and their heads. And so we can now announce with confidence that the lions will return to Purnon in the next month. So in a month's time, we will have them back home again, and that is something that we are immensely looking forward to.
Yeah, they've been a little delayed, haven't they? We'd originally hoped they could have them here really as early as March, but we had that discussion back and forth with our architect about some of the facial features, and it's been quite amazing to see the way he's taken on board that feedback and some of the additional discoveries about the facial features from the original lions. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, so actually what our architect asked him to do was to go and take a plaster cast off one of the vestiges of one of the faces. And originally this hadn't been done because they were in such poor condition that there was concern about whether doing that process would actually create further damage. Okay. And because there were so many unknowns about the facial features, the architect decided that this would be beneficial to understanding the original facial features. And actually it's quite remarkable what was discovered when he started to work off the plaster cast of the original facial features. So it is really exciting. Now, inside the chateau, we have been progressing also this week the laundry, our first floor laundry. Where's that at?
Well, this week the window for that laundry, the restored window, returned, which is great because that's on the eastern side of the chateau on the first floor, and so it lets in so much light. And so to have that restored window back really fills that room with the light that you would expect it to have. We've also installed the custom stone bench tops. So
which are
really
looking beautiful.
They do look fantastic, and we're really seeing the final steps in place, and also the installation of the electrical goods, so the washer and the dryer, and also some ancillary infrastructure. It's a small space, it's a small laundry, it's not our main laundry, and so we've really had to use the space as efficiently as possible, and we can't wait to share some of these other features with you when the room is finished, but it's very close to being finished now. Now, what about the tisanerie, the tea room on the first floor? Where's that at?
The beautiful tisanerie. So we have shared with you the progress of this room. It was a maid's room. It was very deteriorated. We have got to the stage where in our last update, we shared with you the hanging of some of the walls of the wallpaper, that beautiful Barrassé wallpaper from our collaboration with Farrow and Ball. And since then, We have made little progress because we've actually been working on a solution for a water fountain. So a lot of you suggested that we should put the sink hidden in the cupboard, but we actually wanted to make a feature of how the water comes into this room. Remember, we need water in this room. It is a tisseranry. It's a tea room, so we need to be able to make cups of coffee and tea and be able to do some washing up in there as well. Hello, Troy, you've decided to join us.
You can see she's had a haircut with the heat here. She's certainly a lot cooler with her coat a lot shorter.
Yeah, well, at the start of the week, she was walking around with a frozen towel wrapped around her for the week, so I think she's much more comfortable now.
Yes, she is.
But back to the tisseranry, and so we have found a solution for a beautiful water fountain that is going to be placed there, which means that we can proceed with that now, and then the installation of that will mean that we can finish the wallpapering. And in the meantime, also, our carpenters are working on the door opening, because remember, we added a door opening onto the first floor corridor. There had been no door there previously, and so our carpenters are currently working on that as well. So off the back of last week's video where we covered the meticulous work that our stonemasons are doing on the restoration of the stone gutters in the moat, we received a lot of questions about how the stone gutters work. Babe, take it away.
Yeah, the design of the stone gutters is quite intriguing. And remember, when the chateau was first constructed, there were no gutters around the roof line. The water simply tumbled off the slate roof and landed at the base of the chateau. And obviously, to protect the building, they needed a system of gutters at ground level to direct the water away so it didn't collect there at the base of the chateau. And over time, it would have undermined the stability of the building and also just created a swamp there in the dry moat. And so they installed this system of stone gutters. And what's quite intriguing is the way the stone pieces are positioned. Now, this is local stone. The stone pieces are called galushes. I don't really know why they're called that, but they're not laid flat. They're angled facing upwards. And this is so as the water comes off the roof and lands on top of the system of gutters, they don't act as a filter or a grill directing the water through them and under. They actually create effectively a path or a channel that can absorb quite a lot of water when there is heavy rain and the water comes off the roof in huge quantities. And really, the stone pieces are angled so that the water is directed into the center of the channel. There's then a straight line of stones that creates, if you like, the direction of travel for the water, and the water travels along those channels through a system of tunnels out of the dry moat, where it's collected in cisterns that sit in front of our large outbuildings. And so in the wet months, in winter and in spring, they would have collected vast amounts of water in those cisterns, and then they could use it productively during the dry months, during summer, here on the gardens, in the parks, or for whatever they wanted it for. So it's really quite an ingenious system. But the restoration of it is a meticulous project. It's going to take our stonemasons weeks and weeks to finish the work that they've got ahead of them. The hot weather this week made it very difficult for them to work safely outside. So not a lot of progress was made this week on that project. But really, they have to recreate the entire network of gutters that sat in the dry moat on 3 sides of the chateau, at the back and on the eastern and western sides. It's a huge project. Thousands of these galouche stones need to be collected from really around the property, where we can take them from other locations and then meticulously put them back in place, securing them with a lime mortar so that the network looks exactly as it would have looked at the end of the 18th century when the chateau was first constructed. Now, a project that we are racing to finish for the Journées du Patrimoine, for our open weekend in September, is the billiard room. Hun, can you give us a bit of an update on that?
Well, there was actually some progress in the billiard room this week. So remember, this is the billiard room that houses the original 18th century billiard table that we found here at Purnon, the oldest surviving billiard table in France. And this week our stonemasons installed the original 18th century bell that had sat on the wall. Now, when we arrived, the billiard room was in a terrible condition. We didn't even know what the purpose of the room was, but there was a bell on the wall. And what intrigued us about this bell is that unlike other bells in the chateau, which are made for the family or the marquis and the marquise to call their domestic staff, this bell actually rang up in the billiard room. So it was used to signal to the marquis that time was up, it was time to go back downstairs. And so it's quite a fascinating feature of the room, and that is back in place.
And because it was designed for the marquee rather than for the servants, it's quite decorative. It's got the fleur-de-lis on it, and it's really quite a charming feature of that room.
Yeah, and wonderful to have it back up after all these years as well. Now, the billiard table itself, the restoration is still continuing. The table, all the woodwork on the table has been restored, as you have seen in previous videos, and now attention has turned to the felt. So the felt on the tabletop itself and decorative elements of the cushions around the table, and that work is progressing as we speak, and we cannot wait to continue to share this restoration with you as it progresses. But babe, what else has been happening here this week?
So in the dry moat, as well as the progress that's been made on the network of stone gutters, one of our stonemason teams has been working on the restoration of the dry moat wall on the western side. Now, for those of you who remember the project on the eastern side for that dry moat wall, you would recall that they built a relief wall, a hidden relief wall behind the stone wall itself, and that's exactly what they're doing on the western side. Last week you saw them lay the concrete footing for that relief wall, so that's not the foundation of the stone wall. We use the original footing for that. It's a new wall that you will never see, but which takes all the pressure off the original stone wall. So this new feature allows them to put a drainage system there. This will protect the wall and it will prolong its longevity, we suspect, for centuries. And so that footing, that new concrete footing, has to be given an opportunity to dry. And so we're just waiting for that to finish so that work can continue on the restoration of the dry moat wall on the western side. So, hun, what about the archive rooms?
So we've shared with you our progress on the archive rooms in previous videos. These are two rooms that are entresols. They are situated between the ground floor and the first floor. They are very hidden. I think these are the most hidden rooms in the chateau, and it's two rooms that sit side by side. This is where we are going to store Purnon's incredible archives and give us a space to ensure that they are protected as well. And so we have finished the preparatory work on the first room. Remember, we skim coated the walls and lime washed the walls, and Tim has been working on adding the cabinetry into those rooms. The second room, we still need to do a fair bit of work on the preparation of the walls, and in the meantime we have been working on the storage solution for all the documents in this room. So we will continue to keep you updated with that very exciting project as we progress, and we really can't wait to have the archives safe, secure, protected and easily accessible, because we reference them all the time when we're doing research for the chateau.
Yeah, there's a rich treasure trove of documents, and when we think of archives we typically think of paper documents, but we really have the most diverse collection, as well as the paper documents themselves, the maps, the letters, etc. There's also coins, medals, there's fabrics, there's items of clothing. We've collected old gramophone records, there's sheet music, there's really all sorts of materials, and of course also the modern documents that we've created as part of our restoration project here. There's photographs and plans, a very diverse collection of items, and we want to make sure that not only are they well organised so that people can access them and find what they're looking for, but most importantly we need to make sure that they're well protected. When we found them here at Purnon, they were abandoned really in the attic in these giant chests, and with the leaky roof it's amazing that they survived as well as they did, and we never want to see them stored in those sorts of conditions again. So that's a really exciting project, and it's not just the restoration of the rooms, it's the organisation of the storage materials to make sure that they're safely secured.
So that's it for all our projects that are currently underway here at the Chateau. And thank you for joining us for our little chat on the bridge this week, something a little different in this heat wave. But this week also exclusively for our Patreon and YouTube plus Patreon access members, we took a little trip to another historic property, and this is actually a historic property that is the home of our incredible architect, Monsieur Frédéric Didier. And Tim takes you on a tour of that, and a really wonderful concert that we were privileged to be at as part part of the Fête de la Musique, which is on the summer solstice, the 21st of June every year here in France. Otherwise,
which is, I need to add, our wedding anniversary.
Can you believe it? We made it a year.
So we think any relationship that can survive the challenges of restoring Château de Purnon is one for the ages. So there we go.
Well done, babe. 1 year.
Happy anniversary to us.
But as always, if you would like to follow the restoration of Château de Purnon more closely, we post a free weekly video every Sunday here on YouTube. We post an exclusive weekly video for our Patreon and YouTube Plus Patreon access members. Otherwise, we post frequent updates on all our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or just hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and we will keep you updated here. See you next week. Thank you.